She was living a secret life. I found the messages, and she tried to steal everything. I never imagined my life would take such a dark turn. When I married her, I thought we were building something real: trust, respect, and a future. But little by little, the cracks started to show. It wasn't the usual fights or misunderstandings. It was something worse. I found out she was cheating on me. Not just a momentary mistake, but a long, calculated betrayal. I remember the sinking feeling the night I discovered the messages, proof on her phone, the hidden meetings, the lies. It felt like my whole world shattered in a single instant. What hurt even more wasn't just the betrayal. It was the coldness in her eyes afterward, as if I was the one who had failed her. Then came the divorce talk. At first, I thought maybe we could part ways quietly, but it quickly turned ugly. She wanted everything: half the house, the car, my savings. Everything I'd worked for. She said she deserved it all because I wasn't there for her anymore. The audacity of it made my blood boil. I knew I couldn't let her walk away with my life. Not after what she did. The thought of losing everything to her was unbearable. But revenge wasn't just about money. It was about justice, about making sure she understood the price of her betrayal. I started gathering evidence, talking to lawyers, preparing for the battle ahead. Every sleepless night, every anxious moment, I told myself this was the only way to regain control of my shattered life. The stress was overwhelming. My mind raced between anger and despair. Sometimes I felt like giving up, like running away from it all. But I didn't, because in the end, I realized this wasn't just about us. It was about protecting my future. And I was ready to fight, not just for what was mine, but for my own peace. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and endless paperwork. Every interaction with her was like walking on a battlefield. She kept pushing, threatening, trying to intimidate me with promises of dragging the divorce through years of court battles. But I wasn't going to back down. I hired a sharp lawyer who understood my pain and anger, someone who could help me fight back strategically. I started digging deeper. I wanted to expose everything: the lies, the secret meetings, the money she siphoned off from our joint accounts without my knowledge. It was exhausting, but it also gave me a strange sense of purpose. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a man taking control. I collected texts, emails, photos, and even hired a private investigator. Every piece of proof was another brick in the wall I was building around her. I often found myself replaying that night in my head, how everything fell apart, the shock, the disbelief, the raw pain that followed. But now, instead of breaking me, it fueled me. The betrayal was a poison, but I was learning to turn it into strength. I was no longer the naive husband who believed in fairy tales. I was becoming a man who understood the cold reality of life and was ready to meet it head-on. Still, the emotional toll was heavy. There were moments when I couldn't sleep, when I felt overwhelmed by sadness and rage. I had to learn to manage those feelings, channel them in a way that wouldn't destroy me. Meditation, long runs at night, late hours at work, they became my therapy. My support system was thin. Few friends understood the depth of the betrayal and the war I was fighting. Despite everything, I held on to one thought. No matter how hard she tried, she wouldn't walk away with a single cent that wasn't rightfully hers. I promised myself that much. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and peace of mind. As the divorce proceedings began, the courtroom became my new arena. Every hearing, every statement, every argument felt like a test of my resilience. I walked in carrying the weight of betrayal, but also a quiet determination to protect what was mine. Her lawyer was aggressive, trying to paint me as neglectful, as the villain of our story. But I stayed calm, letting the evidence speak for itself. One of the most painful parts was hearing her version of our life together. She spun tales of unhappiness and loneliness, hoping to sway the judge's sympathy. But I knew the truth, and my lawyer made sure the truth came out in full detail. The texts, the secret rendezvous, her attempts to hide assets. With every document revealed, her mask slipped further, exposing the cold reality behind her accusations. Despite the stress, I reminded myself to stay focused. This was no longer about emotions. It was about strategy. I meticulously planned every step, consulted my lawyer on every move. It wasn't easy to put my personal pain aside, but it was necessary. Revenge wasn't just an impulse. It was a calculated fight for justice. The nights were the hardest, when the house was silent and the weight of what had happened crashed down on me. I sometimes doubted if I was strong enough to see it through. But then I would remember why I started this battle in the first place. It wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about reclaiming my life and future. Each court session felt like peeling away another layer of the deceit. Her attempts to manipulate the truth only made her case weaker. Slowly, I saw hope returning, a light at the end of a dark tunnel. I was no longer just the man she betrayed. I was the man who would rise from the ashes and take back what was rightfully his. The turning point came when the court ordered a full financial disclosure. I knew this was my chance to strike back. She had been living a double life, funneling money into secret accounts, and even transferring some assets to friends to hide them. When the documents came through, my lawyer and I uncovered everything. Hidden bank accounts, expensive gifts bought with joint funds, even a car registered under someone else's name. It was infuriating to see how carefully she had planned this deception. But I was ready, armed with evidence. I presented a case that left no room for doubt. The judge listened carefully as we exposed the lies one by one. For the first time, I felt a shift in the atmosphere of the courtroom. The confident smirk she wore before was gone, replaced by a nervous tension. Emotionally, I was drained but somehow stronger. The betrayal still stung, but the justice unfolding was a balm. I wasn't just fighting for property, I was fighting for my dignity, for the truth to be heard. Every time I felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down, I reminded myself that this was the only way forward. Behind the scenes, I kept pushing myself. Therapy sessions helped me process the complex emotions, anger, grief, and a bitter sense of loss. I realized that revenge alone wouldn't heal me. I needed to reclaim my identity beyond this pain. So, I started journaling, running more, and reconnecting with people who supported me. I didn't want to become bitter or consumed by hate. Instead, I wanted to emerge wiser, stronger, and free. The court battle was a chapter, but my life had many more pages to turn, and I was ready to write them on my own terms. As the hearings dragged on, the tension between us grew unbearable. Every interaction felt like a Cold War, words disguised as legal formalities, but charged with underlying venom. She tried everything to weaken my resolve, from petty provocations to outright lies. But I stayed firm, reminding myself that this was not just a battle over assets. It was about reclaiming my life and dignity. One thing that surprised me was how much this experience changed me emotionally. I wasn't the broken man I once was after discovering her betrayal. Slowly, I began to understand the importance of self-worth and boundaries. No longer would I let someone else's selfishness dictate my future. I felt an unfamiliar strength growing inside me, born from pain but fueled by hope. I also learned the value of patience. Revenge through the court system is slow and exhausting. It demands careful planning, emotional endurance, and constant vigilance. But I knew that rushing would only give her an advantage. Every document reviewed, every testimony heard, every piece of evidence presented was a step closer to justice. Outside the courtroom, I rebuilt my life brick by brick. Friends who had drifted away came back when they saw my determination. I found new hobbies to distract and heal my mind: long hikes, photography, and writing. Slowly, I was creating a life that no betrayal could destroy. Despite all the stress and sleepless nights, I realized something crucial. The most important victory wasn't winning the court case. It was reclaiming my peace of mind and refusing to be defined by someone else's betrayal. The legal fight was necessary, but the real battle was within me. And in that battle, I was winning. There was a moment in the middle of this nightmare when I doubted everything. The endless court dates, the constant legal jargon, the way her accusations tried to paint me as the villain. It all felt like too much. I remember one night, sitting alone in the dark, overwhelmed by exhaustion and despair, questioning if I could hold on any longer. But in that darkness, I found a flicker of determination that wouldn't let me give up. I realized that my fight wasn't just about winning money or property. It was about reclaiming my sense of self, proving to myself that I wasn't broken beyond repair. The court was my battlefield, yes, but my mind was the real war zone. Each day, I worked on controlling my anger and pain, learning to channel those emotions into something constructive rather than destructive. I took up journaling, writing down every thought, every fear, every hope. It became a mirror to my soul, helping me understand the depths of my emotions and the path I needed to walk to heal. Running in the early morning became a ritual. When the world was quiet, I could breathe, think, and release some of the tension that had built up. Her attempts to manipulate the court grew weaker as my lawyer presented evidence piece by piece. With each victory, no matter how small, I felt a bit more in control. It was a slow process, but it was working. I was no longer the man drowning in betrayal. I was the man standing up for himself. This journey has been brutal, but it has taught me that true strength comes not from avoiding pain, but from facing it head-on and refusing to let it define you. I am still healing, still fighting, but I know now that I am stronger than I ever imagined. The court sessions began to reveal cracks in her story. With every piece of evidence my lawyer presented, her carefully crafted lies started unraveling. The more she tried to defend herself, the more obvious it became that she had been dishonest about everything, from our finances to her intentions. Watching the facade crumble was bittersweet. It meant victory was within reach, but also meant reliving every wound inflicted by her betrayal. Emotionally, I was exhausted, but growing more resilient. The constant stress tested my limits. I felt moments of anger so fierce, I feared losing control. Yet in those moments, I reminded myself to stay calm, to think clearly. Revenge through the court wasn't a wild impulse. It was a precise and calculated fight. Losing my temper would only give her ammunition. I found strength in unexpected places. Friends I had neglected came back, offering support without judgment. I even reconnected with family members who had sensed my pain but didn't know how to help. Their presence reminded me I wasn't alone. It was a reminder that beyond this bitter fight, life still held meaning and hope. The financial details disclosed in court painted a grim picture of how much she had tried to steal and hide. Yet the judge's demeanor changed subtly, indicating the truth was finally being seen. The realization that justice might finally be on my side gave me renewed energy to push forward, even when the battle seemed endless. This experience has been a harsh lesson about trust and betrayal, but also about inner strength and resilience. I've learned that sometimes the most painful trials forge the strongest steel. I was no longer just a man betrayed. I was a man fighting back, ready to rebuild from the ashes of his broken past. One particularly difficult day in court, I felt the full weight of the emotional toll this war had taken on me. The accusations, the endless hearings, the public exposure of my private life, it all felt overwhelming. Yet there was no turning back. I reminded myself why I had started this fight. It wasn't just about the property or the money anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and proving to myself that I was not broken beyond repair. Outside the courtroom, I made a conscious decision to focus on healing. I started seeing a therapist, someone who helped me untangle the complex feelings of betrayal, anger, and grief. Through therapy, I learned to manage my stress and develop coping strategies that kept me grounded during the most intense moments of the legal battle. It was a slow process, but necessary. At the same time, I made an effort to reconnect with my own identity beyond the lawsuit. I revisited old hobbies, spent time outdoors, and nurtured relationships that had suffered during the turmoil. These small steps helped me build a life that wasn't defined by the pain inflicted by my ex-wife. I realized that revenge through the court could not heal me alone. I had to heal myself from within. The court eventually ruled in my favor, acknowledging the evidence of her deceit and unfair claims. The relief I felt was profound, but also complicated. I had won the battle, but the scars remained. What mattered most, though, was that I had taken control of my story. I was no longer a victim. The final court decision was both a relief and a strange kind of closure. She was left with nothing beyond what was fair and legal. The judge's ruling not only protected my assets, but also sent a message. Betrayal and deceit would not go unpunished. I sat in that courtroom, exhausted but victorious, realizing that this wasn't just a legal win. It was a personal triumph. In the days that followed, I felt an overwhelming mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and even a quiet sense of peace. The fight had taken so much from me: time, energy, and trust. But it had also taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, self-respect, and the importance of standing up for oneself. I wasn't the same man who had walked into this nightmare months ago. There were moments when the memories of her betrayal still stung sharply, but they no longer controlled me. I had reclaimed my life and my dignity. The path to healing was long and winding, But this victory marked a significant turning point. I began to see a future where I could trust again. Trust myself first and foremost. In the end, the revenge wasn't about causing her pain. It was about protecting myself from further harm. Justice was a shield, not a weapon. This journey changed me, but it didn't break me. I was ready to move forward, stronger and wiser, carrying the lessons learned, but leaving behind the bitterness. The courtroom drama had ended, but my story was far from over. It was time to rebuild, to rediscover who I was without the shadow of betrayal looming over me. And for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. Update 1. Months had passed since the final court ruling, but the aftermath of the divorce still echoed in my life. Winning the case gave me legal victory, but healing my heart was another story. For a long time, I struggled with moments of bitterness and loneliness. The betrayal left scars deeper than I ever expected. Some days, I questioned if I'd ever fully move on. Yet, slowly, things began to change. I realized that revenge through the court was only the first step. True healing required something more, rebuilding myself from the inside out. I focused on rediscovering passions I had long forgotten. Music, which once brought me joy, became my refuge. Writing, too, helped me process emotions I couldn't voice aloud. I also committed to self-care in a way I never had before. Physical workouts kept my body strong. Therapy helped me untangle complex feelings. I understood that to truly move forward, I had to forgive, not for her sake, but for mine. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or excusing the betrayal. It meant freeing myself from the prison of resentment. Revenge through the court was a battle won, but the fight for my own peace was ongoing. Each day, I worked to reclaim my happiness, learning that strength isn't just about standing firm against others, but standing firm within myself. As I immersed myself in rebuilding my life, I noticed a subtle shift inside me. The anger that had fueled my fight slowly softened, replaced by a cautious hope. I began reconnecting with friends and family, allowing myself to be vulnerable again. The walls I had built to protect myself were starting to come down, brick by brick. Work became a new focus, a place where I could channel my energy productively. I took on new projects, challenged myself, and found satisfaction in small achievements. It felt like I was reclaiming control, not just over my finances or property, but over my entire life. Despite the progress, the memories still haunted me. There were times when loneliness crept in and the pain resurfaced. But now, instead of letting it consume me, I faced it head-on. I learned that healing isn't linear. It comes in waves with ups and downs. What mattered was that I didn't let setbacks define me. Looking back, I understood that the court battle, painful as it was, forced me to confront my own limits and weaknesses. It pushed me to grow in ways I never expected. And though the scars remained, they reminded me of my strength to endure and overcome. With time, I came to realize that my revenge through the court was just one chapter in a much larger journey, a journey of self-discovery and healing. I wasn't the same person who walked into that courtroom months ago. I was someone stronger, more self-aware, and ready to build a future untethered from past pain. I started setting new goals, focusing on what truly mattered to me: personal growth, meaningful relationships, and inner peace. The lessons I learned through betrayal and battle became guides rather than burdens. I learned to trust again, slowly but genuinely, beginning with myself. Most importantly, I forgave, not to absolve her, but to free myself from the chains of resentment. Forgiveness became my gift to myself, a way to close the door on bitterness and open a new one to hope. Now, I look forward with cautious optimism, knowing life can still surprise me. The scars remain, but they don't define me. I am more than the pain I endured. I am a man who chose to rise, to fight, and ultimately to heal.